The champagne flutes clinked against the silver tray as I weaved through the crowd, my black uniform blending into the shadows between glittering gowns and tailored tuxedos. The Harrington annual charity gala was in full swing, the grand ballroom of the Belmont Hotel transformed into a sea of wealth and influence I could only dream of. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across marble floors, and the air tasted of expensive perfume and privilege. "Excuse me," I murmured, though no one bothered to move. I was invisible to them, just another server, part of the background machinery that kept their evening running smoothly. My feet ached in the mandatory black heels, my 6th straight hour of standing nearly unbearable. But I needed this job. The envelope in my apartment with the final notice from the hospital wasn't going to pay itself. "Champagne, sir?" I offered the last flute on my tray to a portly gentleman who didn't even glance my way as he took it. His diamond cufflinks probably cost more than 6 months of my rent. "That's the last of them, Eliza," said Marco, another server passing by with empty appetizer plates. "Mrs. Winters wants you to check on the VIP section. They're running low on the special reserve." I nodded, suppressing a sigh. The VIP section meant the raised platform at the far end of the ballroom, sectioned off with velvet ropes and guarded by men whose bulging suit jackets couldn't quite hide their holstered weapons. Security for the elite. I'd been avoiding that area all night. "On it," I replied, tucking a strand of brown hair that had escaped my mandatory tight bun. As I made my way to the service bar for the special reserve champagne, my gaze drifted to the glass doors leading to the balcony. Just a 5-minute break, that's all I needed. Just 5 minutes to breathe air that wasn't heavy with wealth and judgment. I glanced around. Mrs. Winters, the event coordinator, was deep in conversation with the hotel manager. The other servers were busy with the dinner preparation. No one would notice if I slipped away briefly. The cool night air hit my face like a blessing as I stepped onto the balcony. The city sprawled below, a tapestry of lights against the darkness. I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply, feeling the tension in my shoulders ease slightly. "Shouldn't you be working?" The voice, deep, accented with something I couldn't place, startled me. I spun around, nearly losing my balance on the polished stone floor. He stood in the shadows, the ember of a cigarette glowing between his fingers. I couldn't make out his face clearly, but his silhouette was tall, broad-shouldered, beneath what was obviously an expertly tailored suit. Not one of the regular guests. I'd been serving them all night. This man had an air of something different, something dangerous. "I'm sorry, sir. I stammered, backing toward the door. Taking a moment to breathe, he finished for me, his voice unexpectedly gentle. "Don't apologize for being human." He stepped forward, and the soft light from the ballroom caught his features. My breath hitched. He was older than me, maybe late 30s, with olive skin and dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on a Renaissance painting. Strong jaw, straight nose, and eyes so intensely dark they seemed to absorb the light around them. But it was the scar, a thin white line running from his right temple to the corner of his mouth, that made my heart rate quicken. I knew instantly who he was. Everyone in the city knew of Adriano Costello, or at least the whispers about him. The businessman whose enterprises extended far beyond legitimate commerce. The man whose name was spoken in hushed tones even by the wealthy elite inside. "I should get back," I managed, my voice barely audible. He nodded, taking another drag of his cigarette before extinguishing it precisely. "Of course." His eyes stayed on me, assessing, contemplating. "What's your name?" I hesitated. Everything in me screamed not to answer, to flee back to the safety of the crowd, but refusing him felt impossible. "Eliza. Eliza Brennan. Eliza." The way he said it made it sound like he was tasting it, committing it to memory. "Go on then. Don't let me keep you from your duties." I slipped back inside, heart hammering against my ribs. The encounter left me shaken in a way I couldn't explain. I rushed to the service bar, filling my tray with flutes of the special reserve champagne, a vintage that cost more per bottle than I made in a week. The VIP section loomed ahead. 3 round tables occupied by men in bespoke suits and women dripping in jewels. At the center table sat Adriano Costello, now flanked by two men with the unmistakable bulk of concealed weapons beneath their jackets. He'd moved inside while I was getting the champagne. I approached cautiously, offering drinks with a practiced smile that felt brittle on my face. When I reached his table, I kept my eyes down, focusing on the gleaming surface and the hands that reached for the champagne. Heavy rings, manicured nails, the subtle scent of expensive cologne. Miss Brennan. My name in his mouth froze me in place. I looked up, meeting those dark eyes again. He remembered. Of course he remembered. "Sir?" I managed. "You missed a spot." He gestured to the corner of his own mouth, indicating I should check mine. Mortified, I quickly wiped at my face, feeling a smudge of lipstick come away. "Thank you," I murmured. The ghost of a smile touched his lips, there and gone in an instant. I turned to leave, desperate to escape his presence, when disaster struck. The heel of my shoe caught in the plush carpet. I stumbled, the remaining champagne flutes on my tray tilting precariously. I corrected, overcorrected, and watched in horror as one flute tipped over the edge, its golden contents spilling directly onto the lap of the woman beside Adriano Costello. "You stupid girl!" she shrieked, leaping up as the expensive champagne soaked into her crimson gown. "Do you have any idea what this dress costs?" The room seemed to freeze. Every eye turned toward the commotion. Mrs. Winters was already hurrying over, her face a mask of professional panic. "I'm so sorry," I gasped, setting down the tray and grabbing napkins. "Please let me—" "Don't touch me!" The woman slapped my hand away. She was beautiful in that cold, perfect way. Blonde hair arranged in an elaborate updo, diamonds at her throat and ears, features sharp with fury. "You're fired. Do you hear me? I'll make sure you never work another event in this city." Mrs. Winters arrived, full of apologies and offers to cover cleaning costs. I stood frozen, watching my life crumble before me. Without this job, I couldn't pay rent. Couldn't make the hospital payments for my mother's care. Couldn't survive. "Enough, Vanessa." Adriano's voice cut through the commotion like a blade. He hadn't raised it, but the authority in his tone silenced everyone immediately. "Accidents happen." "Look what she did to my dress," Vanessa protested, though with noticeably less venom. Adriano's expression didn't change. "Mr. Reynolds will take you to have it cleaned. I believe the hotel has facilities." A subtle nod, and one of his men stepped forward, gesturing for Vanessa to follow. She looked like she wanted to argue but thought better of it. With a final glare in my direction, she stalked away. "Mrs. Winters," Adriano continued, his tone pleasant, but leaving no room for refusal. "I believe your staff is overworked tonight. Perhaps Miss Brennan could use a short break to compose herself." Mrs. Winters blinked rapidly. "Of course, Mr. Costello. Eliza, take 15 minutes in the staff room." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Instead of being fired on the spot, I was being given a break. I mumbled thanks and backed away from the table, feeling Adriano's eyes follow me across the room. In the quiet of the staff break room, I splashed cold water on my face, careful not to ruin my makeup further. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. That woman, Vanessa, could still ensure I lost my job, and even if she didn't, the humiliation of what had happened would follow me through every future event. When my 15 minutes were up, I reluctantly returned to the ballroom, expecting to be assigned to dishwashing duty for the remainder of the night. Instead, Mrs. Winters intercepted me with a strange expression. "Eliza, you're wanted in the East Wing." "The East Wing?" I echoed. That was where the hotel's private suites were located, reserved for the most exclusive guests. "Why?" "Mr. Costello has requested your services for the remainder of the evening. Personally." Ice slid down my spine. "What services?" "Serving drinks to his private party," Mrs. Winters clarified, though her eyes held concern. "I told him we couldn't spare staff, but he was insistent. Said he'd pay triple your normal rate for the inconvenience." "Triple." The figure echoed in my head. That would cover next week's hospital bill with enough left over for groceries. "You don't have to go," Mrs. Winters added quietly. "I can find someone else." But we both knew that wasn't true. No one said no to Adriano Costello. Not Mrs. Winters, not the hotel, and certainly not a struggling server with mounting debts. "It's fine," I said, forcing confidence into my voice. I'll go. Mrs. Winters nodded, relief and worry battling in her expression. Suite 512. Take the service elevator. She hesitated. Eliza, be careful. The ride to the 5th floor felt eternal. Each soft ping of the passing floors marked one step closer to something I couldn't name. Fear? Yes, but mixed with something else. Curiosity. A dangerous pull toward the unknown. The hallway of the East Wing was hushed, thick carpeting muffling my footsteps. I found Suite 512 and raised my hand to knock, then paused, drawing a steadying breath. Before my knuckles could touch the wood, the door swung open. A man I recognized as one of Adriano's security details stood there, his expression impassive as he looked me over. Miss Brennan. Not a question. They were expecting me. This way. He stepped aside, allowing me to enter a suite that was larger than my entire apartment. The entryway opened to a spacious living area with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the glittering city. Several men in suits were scattered around, some engaged in quiet conversation, others looking up at my arrival with varying degrees of interest. And there, standing by the windows with his back to the room, was Adriano Costello. Even from behind, his presence commanded the space. He turned as I entered, those dark eyes finding mine immediately. Miss Brennan, he said, gesturing me forward. Thank you for joining us. As I approached, every instinct warned me I was walking into something I couldn't escape. The room felt charged with unspoken expectations and hidden motives. I didn't understand why I was here, why he had pointed me out specifically. I only knew that somewhere between the spilled champagne and this moment, my life had veered onto a path I never anticipated. And that Adriano Costello, the most dangerous man in the city, was now looking at me like I was something valuable, something he intended to keep. You seem nervous, Adriano observed, his voice low enough that only I could hear him. The suite hummed with subdued conversation and the clink of ice in crystal tumblers, but in that moment, it felt like we were alone. I'm not sure why I'm here, I admitted, hating how small my voice sounded. A smile played at the corner of his mouth, not quite reaching those dark eyes. To serve drinks, as Mrs. Winters told you. He gestured to a private bar setup in the corner of the room. My associates prefer whiskey to champagne. Can you manage that? Relief washed through me. Just drinks. Normal server duties. I nodded, perhaps too eagerly. Of course. Good. He stepped closer, and I caught the scent of him. Expensive cologne with notes of sandalwood and something darker, more primal. And perhaps to satisfy my curiosity, before I could ask what he meant, he turned to address one of his men, effectively dismissing me. I retreated to the bar, focusing on the familiar ritual of preparing drinks to steady my nerves. The whiskey bottles arranged there cost more than my monthly rent, their amber contents gleaming in the subtle lighting. As I worked, I observed the room through quick, cautious glances. These weren't just business associates. The way they deferred to Adriano, the tense alertness in their postures, these were his subordinates, men who answered to him, who feared him. I counted 7 besides Adriano himself, plus 2 by the door who never strayed from their posts. I circulated with a tray of whiskey, offering fresh drinks and collecting empty glasses. The men largely ignored me, continuing conversations that hushed when I approached and resumed when I moved away. Business discussions, some in Italian that I couldn't understand. References to shipments, territories, arrangements with names I didn't recognize. One man, younger than the rest with sharp features and hungry eyes, tracked my movements too closely. When I served him, his fingers brushed mine deliberately. "Grazie, Bella," he murmured, his gaze traveling down my uniform in a way that made my skin crawl. I pulled away, only to bump into someone behind me. A solid chest, the subtle scent of sandalwood. Adriano. "Marco," he said quietly, one hand coming to rest lightly on my shoulder. "Miss Brennan is here to serve drinks, not to be harassed." The younger man's expression flickered between defiance and fear before settling on a tight smile. "Of course. My apologies." Adriano's hand lingered on my shoulder a moment longer than necessary before he moved away, returning to his conversation by the windows. The protective gesture confused me. Was it concern for me, or simply asserting control over something? Someone. He considered his property for the evening. The next hour passed in a blur of serving drinks and trying to make myself as unobtrusive as possible. I caught fragments of conversations. Property acquisitions in the warehouse district. Problems with someone named Donovan. Arrangements for a shipment coming in through the North Docks. Nothing that made sense to me. Nothing I wanted to understand. As the night wore on, the group thinned. Men departed with respectful nods to Adriano, until only he, Marco, and 2 security guards remained. The atmosphere shifted from business to something less defined. Marco sprawled on one of the leather sofas, tumbler in hand, while Adriano stood gazing out at the city lights. "Get us another drink, would you, Bella?" Marco called to me, his earlier reprimand apparently forgotten. I moved to the bar, aware of his eyes on me as I poured whiskey over fresh ice. When I brought it to him, he patted the sofa beside him. "Sit. Take a break. I should... sit," he repeated, his tone hardening. I perched stiffly on the edge of the sofa, as far from him as possible. The security guards kept their eyes forward, expressions blank. "So," Marco drawled, sipping his whiskey, "what's a pretty girl like you doing serving drinks? Shouldn't you be at university or something?" "I was," I said, staring at my hands folded in my lap. "Had to drop out. Let me guess. Money?" I nodded, not elaborating on the medical bills, the second mortgage on our small house, the endless cycle of working just to stay afloat while my mother's condition deteriorated. "I could help with that," Marco said, sliding closer. His breath carried the sharp bite of whiskey. "Pretty girl like you, there are better ways to make money than carrying trays all night." My stomach clenched. "I should check if Mr. Costello needs anything." Marco's hand clamped around my wrist, hard enough to hurt. "Don't be rude, Bella. I'm offering to help you." "The lady said no, Marco." Adriano's voice cut through the room like ice. He hadn't turned from the window, hadn't raised his voice, but the command in his tone was unmistakable. Marco released my wrist immediately, sitting back with a forced laugh. "We were just talking, Adriano. Getting to know each other." "Miss Brennan." Adriano finally turned, his expression unreadable. "Would you join me for a moment?" It wasn't a request. I stood, relief and fresh anxiety warring in my chest as I crossed to where he stood. Behind me, I heard Marco mutter something in Italian, too low for me to catch. "Ignore him," Adriano said when I reached him. "Marco has impulse control issues. It's why he'll never advance beyond his current position." He said it loudly enough for Marco to hear, a public rebuke that made the younger man's face flush with anger. Adriano gestured to the door on the far side of the suite. "Walk with me." I hesitated, glancing back at the room, at the exit that suddenly seemed very far away. "Just to the balcony," Adriano clarified, reading my fear. "Where the security cameras can see us, if that makes you feel safer." It didn't, not really, but refusing felt impossible. I followed him through the door into what appeared to be the master bedroom of the suite, a massive space dominated by a king-sized bed and more floor-to-ceiling windows. Adriano walked past the bed without a glance, heading straight for the glass doors that led to a private balcony. The cool night air was a relief after the stifling tension inside. The balcony overlooked the city from an even higher vantage than the main ballroom, the lights stretching to the horizon where they met the blackness of the ocean. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Adriano said, his accent thickening slightly as he gazed out at the view. "I've always loved this city, even when it tried to destroy me." I didn't know how to respond to that, so I remained silent, keeping a careful distance between us. Below, tiny figures moved along the streets, headlights traced the grid of roads, all of them unaware of being observed from above. I wondered how many businesses down there paid protection to the man standing beside me. "Why did you have to drop out of university, Eliza?" he asked, startling me with the personal question and the use of my first name. "My mother got sick," I answered, the familiar pain tightening my chest. "Cancer. The insurance. It wasn't enough." Adriano nodded, unsurprised. The American healthcare system, so civilized, so brutal. He turned to face me, studying my face with an intensity that made me want to shrink away. And your father? Gone. Left when I was 12. So it's just you caring for her. It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. She's in a specialized care facility now. The treatments are experimental, but they're working. She has a chance. I didn't add that the chance came with a price tag that kept me awake at night, working double shifts and still falling behind. Noble, Adriano said, and I couldn't tell if he was being sincere or mocking. Family is everything. Those who abandon it. He shook his head, disgust evident in his expression. Men like your father deserve nothing but contempt. The vehemence in his voice surprised me. For a moment, the mask slipped, revealing something raw and personal beneath the controlled exterior. Then it was gone, his features composing themselves back into neutral observation. What were you studying? He asked, changing the subject abruptly. Nursing, I said, a bitter smile twisting my lips at the irony. Dropping out of nursing school to pay for medical care. You want to help people. I shrugged. I want to make enough money to live. He laughed then, unexpected and genuine. Practical. I like that. His gaze returned to the city below. Do you know who I am, Eliza? My heart rate picked up. Everyone knows who you are, Mr. Costello. Adriano, he corrected. And what is it that everyone knows? I swallowed hard. That you're influential, that your business interests are diverse. Another laugh, shorter this time. A diplomatic answer. Most would say I'm a criminal, a monster who profits from suffering. He looked at me directly. Is that what you think? Every instinct screamed to lie, to flatter, to say whatever would keep me safe. But something in those dark eyes demanded honesty, as if he'd know immediately if I tried to deceive him. I think, I said carefully, that good and evil aren't as simple as people want them to be, that sometimes surviving means making difficult choices. His eyes widened slightly, the first genuine surprise I'd seen from him. For a long moment, he just looked at me, the silence stretching between us like a living thing. Why am I really here? I finally asked, unable to bear the tension any longer. It's not just to serve drinks. Adriano turned back to the view, his profile sharp against the night sky. No, he agreed, it's not. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. I recognize something in you, something familiar. What? I asked, genuinely confused. Hunger, he said simply. The kind that comes from having nothing handed to you, from fighting for every scrap. He glanced at me. I grew up with nothing, less than nothing, in a neighborhood where children disappeared and no one asked questions, where the only path out was to become the thing everyone feared. I didn't know what to say to this unexpected confession, this glimpse behind the curtain of his carefully constructed persona. I have a proposition for you, he continued when I remained silent. My stomach dropped. I'd heard enough about Adriano Costello to know that his propositions were rarely things decent people accepted. Whatever he was about to offer, it wouldn't be as simple as serving drinks at private parties. I'm not, I began, panic rising in my throat. Not what you're thinking, he interrupted, a hint of amusement in his voice. I need someone to help manage my household affairs. My previous assistant recently departed under unfortunate circumstances. The way he said unfortunate circumstances sent a chill down my spine. I didn't want to know what had happened to his previous assistant. I need someone organized, discreet, and unconnected to my other business interests. Someone who understands the value of loyalty. His eyes held mine. The position pays $15,000 a month, plus full medical coverage that would include your mother's treatments at the best facility in the country. The figure struck me like a physical blow. $15,000 a month. More money than I'd ever seen. Enough to pay for my mother's care, to clear our debts, to perhaps even finish my degree eventually. What would I have to do? I asked, hating how tempted I already was, how easily the sum had caused me to consider something I knew was dangerous. Manage my schedule, coordinate household staff, handle personal correspondence. occasionally accompany me to social functions. He shrugged as if it were the most normal job description in the world. Nothing illegal. Nothing that would compromise your principles. I didn't believe him. Couldn't believe him. There had to be a catch. Why me? You don't know anything about me. I know enough, he said cryptically. And I'm rarely wrong about people. The wind picked up, sending a chill through my thin uniform, Adriano noticed, shrugging off his jacket in one smooth motion and draping it over my shoulders before I could protest. The weight of it, the lingering warmth of his body, the scent of him surrounding me, it felt dangerously intimate. You don't have to answer now, he said, reaching into the inside pocket of the jacket still around my shoulders and producing a business card. Think about it. Call this number when you decide. I took the card automatically, the heavy cardstock embossed with just a phone number, no name. And if I say no? His expression remained unchanged, but something shifted in his eyes, a coldness that hadn't been there before. Then you continue serving drinks and falling behind on your mother's medical bills until they transfer her to a state facility where she'll receive minimal care and die within 6 months. The brutal assessment of my situation knocked the breath from my lungs. I took a step back, bumping against the balcony railing. How do you... I make it my business to know things, Eliza. He moved closer, eliminating the distance I'd created. I can be a powerful friend or a terrible enemy. The choice is yours. Words failed me. This wasn't a choice. It was coercion wrapped in the thinnest veneer of opportunity. The sound of the balcony door opening saved me from having to respond. One of the security guards stepped out, his expression apologetic. Sir, Mr. Donovan is on the line. Says it's urgent. Adriano's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Tell him I'll call back in 5 minutes. The guard nodded and retreated, closing the door behind him. I should get back to work, I said, seizing the interruption as an escape. I started to shrug off his jacket, but his hand on my arm stopped me. Keep it for now, he said. You can return it when you come to give me your answer. I haven't agreed to anything. Not yet. The confidence in his voice was absolute. He knew the position I was in, knew I couldn't afford to refuse. But you will. I left the hotel that night with Adriano Costello's jacket wrapped around me like a shroud, his business card burning a hole in my pocket, and the weight of an impossible decision crushing my chest. The city bus rumbled beneath me as I stared out the window, watching raindrops race down the glass, distorting the neon lights beyond. $15,000 a month. The figure kept circling in my mind, tantalizing and terrifying in equal measure. With that kind of money, I could move Mom to the private facility her doctors had recommended, the one with experimental treatments showing promising results for cases like hers. I could pay off our mounting debts. Maybe even return to school eventually. All I had to do was tie my life to Adriano Costello, a man whose name made hardened businessmen pale, whose empire was built on blood and fear. The bus lurched to a stop 2 blocks from my apartment building. I clutched Adriano's jacket tighter around me as I stepped into the rain, the expensive fabric repelling water in a way my cheap raincoat never could. Even his clothing was a reminder of the power differential between us. What he could give so casually cost more than I made in a month. My apartment building loomed ahead, a dingy 5-story walk-up with security that consisted of a broken intercom system and doors that never quite locked properly. My home for the past 3 years, ever since selling our family house to pay for Mom's initial treatments. I trudged up 4 flights of stairs, each step an effort after being on my feet all night. The familiar scent of mildew greeted me as I unlocked my door. 1 bedroom, kitchen barely big enough to turn around in, bathroom with perpetually temperamental plumbing. But it was clean, and it was mine. For now, at least, until the next rent increase pushed it beyond my grasp. I hung Adriano's jacket carefully on the back of a kitchen chair, then collapsed onto my threadbare sofa, too exhausted to even change out of my uniform. The events of the night played on repeat behind my closed eyelids. The spilled champagne, Vanessa's rage, Adriano's dark eyes watching me from across the room, his proposition on the balcony. The sharp trill of my phone jolted me awake. I hadn't realized I'd fallen asleep, but the gray light of dawn now filtered through my thin curtains. I fumbled for my phone, expecting Mrs. Winters calling to fire me after the previous night's disaster. Hello? I answered, voice rough with sleep. Eliza Brennan? An unfamiliar male voice, clipped and professional. Yes? This is Dr. Abernathy from Sunset Care Center. I'm calling about your mother, Catherine Brennan. My heart stopped. What happened? Is she okay? She's stable, he assured me quickly. But we've had to adjust her medication protocol. The cancer has shown some progression in her lymph nodes. I closed my eyes, willing away the tears that threatened. What does that mean? It means we need to be more aggressive with treatment. I'd like to start her on a new immunotherapy regimen, but he hesitated. It's not covered by your current insurance plan. Of course it wasn't. Nothing that might actually help ever was. How much? I asked, the words scraping my throat. The initial treatment cycle would be approximately $27,000. With follow-up care, you're looking at around $40,000 for the first 3 months. The room tilted around me. $40,000. It might as well have been $40 million. Miss Brennan, are you still there? Yes, I whispered. I'll figure something out. Can we discuss this in person? I'd like to visit Mom today. Of course. I'll be on rounds this afternoon. Come by around 3. After hanging up, I sat motionless, staring at the jacket draped over my kitchen chair. Adriano Costello's business card was still in the pocket. One phone call, and my financial problems would disappear. One phone call, and I'd be tying my life to a man who terrified me. What choice did I really have? I showered, dressed in my one decent outfit, black slacks and a navy blouse I'd found at a thrift store, and headed to the care facility. The rain had stopped, but the sky remained a threatening steel gray, heavy with the promise of more to come. Sunset Care Center was nicer than the state hospitals, but far from the luxury facilities advertised in glossy brochures. The halls smelled of antiseptic and cafeteria food, and the nurses, though kind, were clearly overworked. I signed in at the front desk, pinning the visitor badge to my blouse before making the familiar journey to room 214. Mom was sitting up in bed when I arrived, her once vibrant red hair now thin and dull against the stark white pillow. The disease had whittled her down, stealing flesh from her bones and color from her cheeks, but her eyes, the same deep green as mine, lit up when she saw me. "There's my girl," she said, holding out arms that seemed too fragile to even lift. I hugged her gently, breathing in the familiar scent of her lavender lotion, pretending I didn't notice how much more pronounced her bones felt through the thin hospital gown. "How are you feeling today?" I asked, settling into the chair beside her bed. "Oh, you know me, stubborn as ever." She smiled, but I could see the pain she was hiding, the effort it took just to keep her expression bright for my sake. "How was the fancy party last night? Did you serve champagne to any celebrities?" I forced a laugh, pushing aside memories of Adriano's dark eyes. "No celebrities, just a bunch of rich people pretending to care about charity." We chatted about nothing important. The nurse she liked, the terrible hospital food, a book she was reading. I didn't tell her about Dr. Abernathy's call, about the $40,000 we didn't have, about the impossible choice I was facing. Her burden was heavy enough without adding my problems. Dr. Abernathy found us there an hour later, Mom laughing at some story I'd made up about a guest's ridiculous hat at the gala. He was younger than I expected, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a gentle manner that immediately put Mom at ease. "Mrs. Brennan, how are you feeling today?" he asked, checking the monitors beside her bed. "Ready to run a marathon," Mom quipped, making him smile. "Let's aim for a walk down the hall first, shall we?" He made notes on her chart, then glanced at me. "Miss Brennan, could we speak privately for a moment?" I squeezed Mom's hand and followed Dr. Abernathy into the hallway, steeling myself for whatever he was about to say. "Your mother's cancer is aggressive," he said without preamble once we were out of earshot. "The standard treatments aren't working as well as we'd hoped." I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the hospital's stuffy air. "But the new treatment you mentioned, the immunotherapy, it could help. It's shown remarkable success in cases similar to your mother's, 70% response rate in patients with her genetic markers." He hesitated. "But without insurance coverage, I'll find the money," I said with more conviction than I felt. Dr. Abernathy's expression softened. "There are some patient assistance programs we could try. but they're oversubscribed and the waiting lists are long, and frankly, your mother doesn't have that kind of time. The world narrowed to a pinpoint, the hospital sounds fading around me. How long? I managed to ask. Without more aggressive intervention? 3 months, maybe 4. He placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. I'm sorry, Miss Brennan. I wish I had better options to offer you. 3 months. The time frame echoed in my head like a death knell. 3 months with my mother, unless I could somehow produce $40,000. Then another 40, and another after that, for as long as the treatments continued. I understand, I said mechanically. Thank you for being honest with me. I returned to Mom's room with a smile plastered on my face, promising to bring her favorite lemon squares on my next visit. I kissed her goodbye, told her I loved her, and walked out of the hospital into the gathering storm, my decision already made. Rain soaked through my clothes as I huddled at the bus stop, fingers numb as I pulled Adriano's business card from my wallet. The elegant black numbers stared back at me, offering salvation and damnation in equal measure. I dialed before I could change my mind. A woman answered on the second ring. Yes? Her tone was clipped, professional. My name is Eliza Brennan. I need to speak with Mr. Costello. Regarding? He made me an offer. Last night at the Harrington Gala. A pause. 1 moment. The line went silent for so long I thought I'd been disconnected. Then his voice, that distinctive accent wrapping around my name like a physical touch. Eliza, I'm pleased you called. I closed my eyes, rain streaming down my face, indistinguishable from tears. I accept your offer. Another pause. I'm glad to hear it. He sounded unsurprised, as if he'd known all along what my answer would be. Perhaps he had. I'll send a car for you tomorrow morning at 8. Pack whatever you need for an extended stay. Extended stay? I echoed, alarm cutting through my resignation. You didn't mention living arrangements. The position requires you to be on call at all times. There are private quarters for you at my residence. His tone left no room for negotiation. Is that a problem? Yes. I wanted to scream. Yes. It's a problem to uproot my entire life, to move into the home of a man I barely know, a man whose reputation terrifies me. No, I said instead, thinking of Mom, of 3 months that could be extended into years with the right treatment. No problem. Good. We'll discuss the details tomorrow. He paused. And Eliza? I think you've made a wise choice. The line went dead before I could respond. I spent the night in a daze, packing my meager possessions into 2 suitcases, clothes, a few books, the framed photo of Mom and me from before she got sick. I called Mrs. Winters to resign from the catering company, ignoring her concerned questions about my sudden departure. I paid my overdue rent and arranged for the rest of my things to go into storage. By morning, I had effectively erased my existence from the world I knew. The car that arrived at 8 was a sleek black Bentley with tinted windows, driven by a stone-faced man who introduced himself only as Frank. He loaded my suitcases into the trunk without comment and held the back door open for me. Where are we going? I asked as we pulled away from my apartment building for the last time. Mr. Costello's primary residence, Frank replied, eyes fixed on the road. In Westridge Heights. Westridge Heights, the exclusive enclave of mansions in the hills overlooking the city, homes to old money and new tech billionaires. A world away from my dingy apartment and the hospital corridors where my mother fought for her life. We drove for nearly an hour, leaving the crowded city streets behind, ascending winding roads flanked by ancient trees and imposing security gates. Finally, we turned onto a private drive, the car's tires crunching on pristine gravel as we approached what could only be described as a fortress disguised as a mansion. Gray stone walls rose 3 stories high, punctuated by arched windows and crowned with a slate roof. The grounds stretched in all directions, immaculately landscaped gardens giving way to dense woods that offered natural privacy beyond the man-made security. Cameras mounted discreetly at strategic points, guards patrolling the perimeter, a gate that required both keycard and biometric authentication to enter. Frank pulled up to the main entrance, a massive oak door flanked by stone columns. Before we'd even stopped completely, the door opened, and a woman emerged. Tall, slender, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, with silver-streaked black hair pulled into a severe bun. Her expression as she watched me exit the car could only be described as suspicious. "Miss Brennan," she said, her accent matching Adriano's but more pronounced. "I am Sofia Costello, Mr. Costello's aunt and the manager of this household." I extended my hand. "It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Costello." She ignored my outstretched hand, her dark eyes, so similar to Adriano's, assessing me coldly. "You will address me as Ms. Sofia. Follow me. Mr. Costello is waiting in his study." Chastened, I followed her into the mansion, trying not to gape at the soaring ceilings, marble floors, and artwork that looked valuable enough to fund a small nation. The interior was elegant but masculine. Dark woods, leather furniture, a color palette of deep blues and rich burgundies, old money taste with new money resources. Sophia led me through a maze of hallways to a set of double doors at the rear of the house. She knocked once, then entered without waiting for a response. "The girl is here," she announced, stepping aside to allow me entry. Adriano's study was exactly what I might have imagined. Walls lined with leather-bound books, a massive desk of polished mahogany, windows overlooking carefully tended gardens. Adriano himself stood with his back to us, gazing out at the view, a tumbler of amber liquid in his hand despite the early hour. "Thank you, Zia," he said without turning. "Please show Miss Brennan to her quarters after we've spoken." Sophia gave a curt nod and withdrew, closing the doors behind her with a sound that felt somehow final, as if sealing my fate. Adriano turned then, setting his glass on the desk before approaching me. He wore no jacket today, just a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to expose strong forearms and tailored black pants. The scar on his face seemed more pronounced in the natural light streaming through the windows, a stark reminder of the violence in his past. "Eliza," he said, my name sounding like something precious in his mouth. "Welcome to your new home. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Costello," I replied formally, clutching my purse like a shield. "Adriano," he corrected gently. "If we're to work closely together, there's no need for such formality." He gestured to a seating area near the fireplace. "Please sit. We have much to discuss." I perched on the edge of a leather armchair, watching as he took the seat across from me. Up close, in the daylight, I could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes, the slight gray at his temples, the way exhaustion lurked beneath his composed exterior. "Before we begin," he said, "I want to assure you that your mother's medical care has already been arranged. She'll be transferred to the Blackwell Medical Center tomorrow. Dr. Abernathy has agreed to continue overseeing her case there." I blinked, stunned. "Blackwell? But that's the best cancer center in the country. How did you—" "I made a call." He shrugged, as if pulling strings to get a terminal cancer patient into an exclusive facility was nothing unusual. "The new treatment protocol Dr. Abernathy recommended has been approved. All expenses will be covered under your employment contract." Relief crashed through me so intensely, I had to press my hands against my knees to stop them from shaking. Mom would get the best care available. She had a chance now, a real chance. "Thank you," I whispered, the words wholly inadequate for what he'd done. Adriano waved away my gratitude. "It's a business arrangement, Eliza. You provide a service, I provide compensation." His expression softened slightly. "Though I'm pleased it gives you peace of mind." The reminder of our arrangement sobered me quickly. "What exactly will my duties entail?" "As I mentioned, you'll manage my household affairs and personal schedule." He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "Sophia has handled these matters for years, but she's returning to Italy next month. You'll work alongside her until then to learn the routines." "She doesn't seem to like me very much," I observed before I could stop myself. A smile tugged at the corner of Adriano's mouth. "Sophia doesn't like anyone very much, especially women in my household." The way he said it, "women in my household," sent a chill down my spine. What exactly did he expect from me? As if reading my mind, he added, "Your position is strictly professional, Eliza. Whatever rumors you might have heard about my personal life, I don't mix business with pleasure." Heat rushed to my face. "I didn't think—" "Yes, you did," he interrupted, amusement evident in his tone. and it's a reasonable concern, given the circumstances. But I assure you, your virtue is safe with me. I wasn't sure whether to be relieved or oddly disappointed by his statement. The thought brought another flush of embarrassment. What was wrong with me? There is one aspect of your role we didn't discuss last night, Adriano continued, his expression turning serious. Discretion is paramount in this household. You'll see and hear things that must remain private. People will visit who are never to be acknowledged outside these walls. Conversations will take place that you are to forget immediately. The implied threat behind his words was clear. I understand. Do you? His gaze bore into mine, because the consequences of betraying my trust would be severe. Not just for you, but for those you care about, my mother. He didn't need to say it explicitly. If I betrayed him, Mom's medical care would be the least of my worries. I understand, I repeated, meeting his eyes steadily, despite the fear curling in my stomach. I won't betray your trust. Adriano studied me for a long moment, as if searching for any hint of deception. Whatever he saw seemed to satisfy him. Good. He stood abruptly. Sophia will show you around the house and explain your duties. You'll begin officially tomorrow. He moved to his desk, pressing an intercom button. Zia, please come to the study. As we waited for Sophia to arrive, Adriano turned back to me. One more thing, Eliza. There's a charity event this Saturday at the Blackwell Center. You'll accompany me. As your assistant, I asked. Something flickered in his eyes. As my guest. The distinction is important in public. Before I could question what he meant, the study doors opened and Sophia entered, her expression no warmer than before. Show Miss Brennan to her quarters, Adriano instructed, and help her understand what will be expected of her. Sophia nodded curtly. This way, Miss Brennan. I rose to follow her, but Adriano's voice stopped me at the door. Eliza. I turned back to find him watching me with an intensity that made my heart skip. Welcome to the family. My quarters, as Sophia called them, were more luxurious than any place I'd ever lived. Located in the east wing of the mansion, they consisted of a spacious bedroom with an adjoining sitting room and a private bathroom that featured both a walk-in shower and a deep soaking tub. The furnishings were elegant but comfortable. A king-sized bed with a plush duvet, a reading nook by the window overlooking the gardens, bookshelves stocked with classics and contemporary fiction. This is excessive for staff accommodations, I said as Sophia showed me around. Her lips thinned. Mr. Costello insisted. The previous assistant had much smaller quarters in the staff wing. The way she said previous assistant made me wonder again what had happened to my predecessor. I wanted to ask, but sensed Sophia wouldn't give me a straight answer. Your duties will begin at 6 a.m., she continued briskly. You'll review Mr. Costello's schedule for the day, prepare any necessary documents, and ensure his breakfast preferences are communicated to the kitchen staff. He rises at 7 and expects his morning briefing by 7:30. She led me through the mansion, pointing out important rooms, the kitchen, the formal dining room, Adriano's private gym, the security office that I was explicitly told never to enter without permission. The house was a labyrinth of wealth and secrets, every room more opulent than the last. The west wing is Mr. Costello's private residence, Sophia explained as we passed a set of heavy wooden doors. You are not to enter without specific invitation or unless there is an emergency. What constitutes an emergency? I asked. Fire, earthquake, armed intruders. She gave me a cold look. Nothing less. The tour continued to the grounds, manicured gardens, a swimming pool that gleamed azure in the afternoon sun, tennis courts, and beyond them, dense woods that formed a natural privacy barrier around the property. The perimeter is secured by both physical and electronic measures, Sophia informed me. Don't wander beyond the gardens without informing security. They have orders to shoot unidentified persons in the outer grounds. I swallowed hard. Noted. By the time we returned to the house, my head was spinning with information. Security protocols, staff schedules, Adriano's preferences and pet peeves. He liked his coffee black with 1 sugar, never took breakfast before 8 a.m., preferred fresh flowers in his study, but none with strong scents. Didn't tolerate lateness from anyone, including himself. You'll need appropriate attire, Sophia said, eyeing my simple blouse and slacks with undisguised disdain. "A car will take you shopping tomorrow. Mr. Costello has established an account for your professional wardrobe." "That's not necessary," I began. "It is not a suggestion." Her tone brooked no argument. "Your appearance reflects on him. The current state of your wardrobe is inadequate." I bit back a retort. This woman already disliked me. Antagonizing her would only make my adjustment more difficult. "Now," Sophia continued, checking her watch, "Mr. Costello will be in meetings for the remainder of the day. You'll dine in your quarters tonight. Starting tomorrow, you'll take breakfast and lunch with the senior staff and dinner with Mr. Costello when he's in residence." "I'll be dining with him?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "He prefers company for meals when his schedule permits. Usually it's myself or his security chief." A hint of suspicion entered her eyes. "Do you find that objectionable?" "No, of course not," I said quickly. "I just wasn't expecting it." Sophia studied me for a long moment. "What were you expecting, Miss Brennan, when a man like Adriano Costello plucks a girl like you from obscurity and installs her in his home?" The implication was clear, and indignation flared through me. "He said the position was strictly professional." "And you believed him?" It wasn't a question, but a statement dripping with skepticism. Should I not have? Sophia's expression softened fractionally, something almost like pity entering her eyes. "My nephew does not bring women into his household without purpose, Miss Brennan, whatever he told you about this position. Time will reveal the full truth." Before I could press her further, she checked her watch again. "I have matters to attend to. A meal will be brought to your room at 7. Tomorrow morning, be in the kitchen by 6. With that, she turned and left me standing alone in the hallway, her words echoing ominously in my mind. That night, I sat at the small table in my sitting room, picking at a meal more elaborate than anything I'd eaten in years: poached salmon, roasted vegetables, fresh bread still warm from the oven. My phone sat beside my plate, displaying a text from Dr. Abernathy confirming Mom's transfer to Blackwell Medical Center the next day. At least that part of Adriano's promise had been fulfilled immediately. As I ate, I tried to make sense of my new reality. 24 hours ago, I'd been serving drinks to the wealthy elite. Now I was living among them, ensconced in a mansion that felt more like a beautiful prison than a home. The salary Adriano had promised would change my life, would save my mother's life. But at what cost to my freedom, to my safety? Sophia's warning haunted me. My nephew does not bring women into his household without purpose. What purpose did I truly serve? Was I really just an assistant, or was I something else? A possession, a plaything, a pawn in some game I didn't understand? The next few days passed in a blur of new routines and information overload. True to Sophia's word, a car took me shopping, where an imperious personal stylist helped me select a wardrobe of designer business attire, tailored suits, silk blouses, dresses appropriate for both office work and formal events. The total cost would have paid my rent for a year, but the purchases were made with a black credit card that bore Adriano's name. No price tags discussed. I learned my duties quickly, managing Adriano's calendar, screening calls, preparing documents, coordinating with household staff. The work itself wasn't difficult, just detail-oriented and exacting. Adriano was demanding but not unreasonable, expecting perfection, but acknowledging good work with brief nods of approval that for some reason I couldn't explain, I found myself craving. I saw him daily, usually in his study or at dinner, where we engaged in surprisingly normal conversation about books, music, current events. He never mentioned his business in my presence, never took calls that might reveal the darker aspects of his empire. It was as if he maintained two separate identities, the ruthless Mafia boss the world whispered about, and the cultured, intelligent man who discussed Italian poetry with me over glasses of wine. The dichotomy was disorienting. Sometimes I could almost forget who he was, what he was capable of, and then something would happen to remind me. A hushed conversation ending abruptly when I entered a room, the constant presence of armed security, the way certain visitors were escorted directly to his study through side entrances, never recorded in the official visitor logs I maintained. A week into my new position, I visited Mom at Blackwell Medical Center. The contrast between this facility and Sunset Care was stark. Private rooms with panoramic views, top-of-the-line equipment, a staff-to-patient ratio that ensured constant attention. Mom looked better than she had in months, her eyes brighter. Some color returned to her cheeks. "This place is amazing, Lizzie," she said, gesturing to her room that resembled a luxury hotel suite more than a hospital. "But how on earth are we affording it?" I'd prepared for this question. "I got a new job. Executive assistant to a businessman. The benefits are incredible." "Must be some businessman," she said, eyebrows raised. "What's his name? What company?" "Adriano Costello," I answered, deciding truth was safer than a lie she might discover. "He owns various businesses, import and export, real estate, hospitality." Her eyes widened. "Costello? I've read about him in the papers. Isn't he—" She lowered her voice. "They say he has connections. It's just a job, Mom," I said, forcing a smile. "And it's allowing you to get the treatment you need. That's all that matters." She squeezed my hand, concern evident in her eyes. "Just be careful, sweetheart. Men like that, they don't give something for nothing." Her words echoed Sophia's warning, intensifying my unease. But watching her respond to a treatment that would have been financially impossible just weeks ago, I pushed my doubts aside. Whatever Adriano's true motives, the reality was that my mother now had a fighting chance. I would pay whatever price necessary for that. On Saturday evening, I stood in my new bedroom, staring at my reflection in the full-length mirror. The dress Sophia had selected for the charity event, a floor-length gown of deep emerald silk that complemented my eyes and hair, made me look like someone I barely recognized. Elegant, sophisticated, like I belonged in Adriano's world. A knock at my door startled me. When I opened it, I found Adriano himself waiting in the hallway, impeccable in a black tuxedo that emphasized his broad shoulders and lean frame. His eyes widened slightly as they took in my appearance. "You look beautiful," he said, the simple compliment sending an unexpected flush of pleasure through me. "Thank you," I replied, suddenly self-conscious. "You look very nice as well." A hint of amusement crossed his face at my awkward response. "Are you ready? The car is waiting." The charity gala at Blackwell Medical Center was even more lavish than the Harrington event where I'd first encountered Adriano. Held in the center's grand atrium, it featured an orchestra, gourmet catering, and a guest list comprised of the city's wealthiest and most influential citizens. The difference was that this time, I wasn't carrying a tray of champagne. I was on Adriano's arm, introduced as his associate to countless people whose names blurred together: doctors, donors, politicians, business leaders. Everyone knew him. Everyone respected him, or feared him. Sometimes it was hard to tell the difference. "Mr. Costello," gushed a silver-haired woman dripping in diamonds. "How wonderful to see you again. Your contribution to our pediatric wing has been transformative." "The children deserve the best care, Mrs. Hartwell," Adriano replied smoothly. "May I introduce Eliza Brennan? She's recently joined my staff." Mrs. Hartwell's eyes assessed me with practiced politeness that didn't quite hide her curiosity. "Lovely to meet you, dear. And what exactly do you do for Mr. Costello?" Before I could answer, Adriano's hand settled possessively at the small of my back. "Eliza manages my personal affairs," he said, his tone discouraging further inquiry. "She's proving quite invaluable." The woman's eyebrows rose slightly, her lips curving into a knowing smile that made my cheeks burn. She thought I was his mistress, I realized. They all probably did. As the evening progressed, I became increasingly aware of the curious glances, the whispered conversations that stopped when we approached, the speculative looks that followed us across the room. Adriano seemed oblivious, or perhaps indifferent, to the gossip swirling around us. He kept me close, his hand rarely leaving my back or arm, his attention focused on me even in the midst of important conversations with others. "You're tense," he observed as we stood by the champagne fountain, momentarily alone. "Are you uncomfortable?" "Everyone thinks I'm sleeping with you," I said bluntly, then immediately regretted my candor. To my surprise, Adriano laughed, a genuine sound of amusement that softened his features and made him look years younger. "Does that bother you?" "Shouldn't it?" He sipped his champagne thoughtfully. People will always talk, Eliza. Their opinions matter only if you give them power. It's different for you, I pointed out. You're a man. Your reputation isn't damaged by such assumptions. True, he acknowledged. The double standard persists, even in these supposedly enlightened times. He studied me over the rim of his glass. Would you prefer I correct their misconceptions? I considered this. Did I want Adriano announcing to everyone that our relationship was strictly professional? Something in me rebelled at the thought, though I couldn't articulate why. No, I said finally. It doesn't matter what they think. His eyes warmed with approval. Now you're learning. Later, as we circulated among the guests, I spotted a familiar face that made my blood run cold. Vanessa, the woman whose dress I'd ruined at the Harrington Gala, stood across the room, her gaze locked on me with unmistakable hostility. What's wrong? Adriano asked, noticing my sudden tension. The woman in the red dress, I murmured. Vanessa. From the Harrington event. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Ah, Vanessa Moretti. Marco's sister. The connection startled me. Marco? The man from your suite that night? Adriano nodded. A distant cousin, technically. His family has ties to mine in Sicily. His expression hardened as he observed Vanessa moving toward us. Stay close to me. Vanessa approached with the confidence of a woman accustomed to her own beauty as a weapon. Her red dress clung to her curves, her blonde hair arranged in an elegant updo that emphasized her sculptured features. Adriano, she purred, air-kissing his cheek. What a pleasant surprise. Her gaze slid to me, ice-cold and assessing. And your server. How quaint. Eliza is my personal assistant now, Adriano replied, his tone pleasant, but with an underlying steel that made Vanessa's smile falter slightly. How fortunate for her. Vanessa's voice dripped with insinuation. Moving up in the world so quickly. One has to wonder what special skills she possesses. My cheeks burned with humiliation. But before I could respond, Adriano's arm slipped around my waist, drawing me closer to his side. Careful, Vanessa, he said softly. Your jealousy is showing. Her perfectly composed expression cracked momentarily, raw anger flashing in her eyes. Jealous? Of her? Don't be ridiculous, Adriano. Then I suggest you show Miss Brennan the respect she deserves as a valued member of my household. The threat in his voice was subtle, but unmistakable. Unless you'd prefer your brother lost his position as well? Vanessa paled slightly. Of course. My apologies if I've offended. The words were stiff, forced through clenched teeth. I'm sure she's quite competent. She is, Adriano agreed. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have others to greet. He guided me away, his hand warm against my back. I apologize for Vanessa, he said once we were out of earshot. She's been trying to secure a position in my household for years. A position? I echoed, confused. Or a position in your bed. The blunt question surprised a laugh out of him. Perhaps both. Her family has traditional views about strengthening alliances through marriage. The idea of Adriano married to someone like Vanessa, cold, calculating, cruel, disturbed me more than it should have. And what are your views? His eyes met mine, something unreadable in their dark depths. Marriage, in my world, is rarely about love, Eliza. It's about power, alliance, continuation of the family line. He paused, but I've never been one to follow tradition blindly. Before I could press him further, a commotion near the entrance caught our attention. Security personnel were converging on a man who appeared to be arguing with the event staff. Though they were trying to be discreet, the disturbance was drawing curious glances. Adriano's expression darkened. Wait here, he instructed, already moving toward the situation. I watched as he approached the security team, spoke briefly to them, then guided the agitated man to a quieter corner. Their conversation appeared intense, with the stranger gesticulating wildly, while Adriano maintained his customary calm. After a few minutes, Adriano signaled to one of his own security personnel, who escorted the man out through a side exit. When Adriano returned to me, his face was carefully neutral, but I could sense the tension beneath the surface. Is everything all right? I asked. A minor business matter, he replied dismissively. Nothing for you to concern yourself with. But later that night, as our car pulled away from the medical center, I noticed Adriano checking his phone repeatedly. his jaw clenched tight. "Something's wrong," I said. Not a question, but a statement. "That man at the gala. It wasn't a minor matter, was it?" Adriano glanced at me, seeming to weigh his response. "You're observant," he said finally. "A valuable quality in an assistant, though sometimes inconvenient for your employer. If I'm to help manage your affairs, I should be informed when something's wrong," I pointed out. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Using logic against me? Brave." He sighed, tucking his phone away. "You're right. But some matters are better kept separate from your official duties, for your own protection." "Protection from what?" I pressed. His expression turned serious. "There are aspects of my business that operate in gray areas, Eliza. Legal technicalities, competitors with fewer scruples than myself, authorities with varying degrees of cooperation or hostility." He held my gaze. "The less you know about these matters, the safer you are." The tacit admission of his illegal activities hung between us. For the first time, he'd acknowledged the darker side of his empire directly to me. "Is that why your previous assistant left?" I asked quietly. "Because they knew too much?" Something cold and dangerous flickered in his eyes. "My previous assistant made a serious error in judgment. He betrayed my trust in a way that couldn't be overlooked." A chill ran through me. "What happened to him?" "He's no longer in this city," Adriano replied, his tone making it clear that was all the information I would receive. "And if you're wise, you won't inquire further." The rest of the drive passed in tense silence. When we arrived back at the mansion, Adriano escorted me to my quarters as usual, pausing at my door. "I don't mean to frighten you, Eliza," he said, his voice gentler than before, "but I need you to understand the reality of your position. Discretion isn't just a professional courtesy in my household, it's a matter of survival." "I understand," I said. And I did. More than I wanted to. He studied my face for a long moment. "Do you regret your decision to accept my offer?" I thought of Mom in her private room at Blackwell, receiving treatment that was already showing positive results. I thought of the financial security I now had, the freedom from the constant grinding anxiety of poverty. "No," I answered honestly. "I don't regret it." Something like relief crossed his features. "Good. Because despite what Sophia or others might imply, I didn't bring you into my home on a whim or for unsavory purposes." He hesitated, uncharacteristically uncertain. "I recognize something in you, Eliza. A strength beneath the vulnerability. A loyalty that can't be bought, but, once earned, is unbreakable." His words stirred something warm in my chest, dangerous in its intensity. "How could you possibly know that about me from one brief encounter?" "Because I've spent my life reading people," he said simply. "My survival has depended on it." His hand rose, hesitating briefly before brushing a strand of hair from my face with unexpected gentleness. "And because I see myself in you. The person I might have been, under different circumstances." The touch sent electricity cascading through me. I stood frozen, caught between the urge to step away and the even more disturbing desire to lean into his hand. Adriano seemed to catch himself, dropping his hand and taking a deliberate step back. "Good night, Eliza," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "Thank you for your company this evening." "Good night," I whispered as he turned to leave. Alone in my room, I stood motionless, my fingertips touching the spot on my cheek where his hand had been. Something was shifting between us. Something neither of us had anticipated. The professional boundaries I'd clung to were blurring, complicated by an attraction I couldn't deny and shouldn't encourage. I thought of all the warnings, from Sophia, from Mom, from Adriano himself, the dangers of his world, the consequences of missteps. Yet despite everything, despite knowing exactly who and what he was, I found myself drawn to him like a moth to flame, irresistibly pulled toward a light that could either illuminate or destroy me. In the weeks that followed, I settled fully into my role in Adriano's household. Sophia departed for Italy after a thorough handover that included both professional instruction and a final cryptic warning. He will offer you everything, and it will seem like a choice. Remember that with men like my nephew, there are no real choices for women like us, only the illusions of them. Her words haunted me, especially as my relationship with Adriano evolved. Our professional interactions gave way to something more complex, dinners that stretched late into the evening, conversations that wandered from business to philosophy, small moments of connection that seemed innocent until I caught him watching me with an intensity that made my heart race. I tried to maintain boundaries, to remember what he was, a criminal, a man whose power was built on violence and fear. But it became increasingly difficult to reconcile the monster from the rumors with the man who discussed classic literature with genuine passion, who visited my mother at Blackwell Weekly without my knowledge until she mentioned it, who respected my opinions and valued my insights in ways no one ever had before. 3 months into my employment, everything changed. I was in Adriano's study late one evening, reviewing his schedule for an upcoming trip to Chicago, when the doors burst open. Marco strode in, his face flushed with anger or exertion, paying me no attention as he addressed Adriano in rapid Italian. I caught only fragments: problema, polizia, Donovan, but Adriano's expression darkened with each word. He responded sharply, then glanced at me, switching to English. Eliza, you should retire for the evening. We have business to discuss. I gathered my tablet and papers, heading for the door, but Marco's next words stopped me cold. She shouldn't be here anyway, he said, glaring in my direction. You know what happened with the last one who knew too much. Enough, Marco, Adriano snapped. Miss Brennan has my complete trust. Marco scoffed. Like Antonio did, before he started talking to the feds? The name hit me like a physical blow. Antonio, my predecessor, the assistant who had departed under unfortunate circumstances, who had apparently been an informant for the FBI. Adriano's eyes met mine across the room, seeing the realization dawn. Eliza, I should go, I said quickly, needing to escape, to process what I'd just learned. I fled to my quarters, heart pounding. Antonio had betrayed Adriano to the authorities and then, what, disappeared? Been eliminated? The implications were terrifying. If Adriano discovered even a hint of disloyalty from me, would I meet the same fate? A soft knock on my door an hour later interrupted my panicked thoughts. I knew who it was before I opened it. Adriano stood in the hallway, his expression grave. May I come in? I stepped aside silently, allowing him to enter. He moved to the center of the room, hands clasped behind his back, unusually hesitant. You heard something tonight that disturbed you, he said finally. Antonio, I said, he was informing on you to the FBI. Adriano nodded once. Yes. And what happened to him? I forced myself to ask, needing to hear it directly. He's alive, Adriano said, surprising me. Living under a new identity in Arizona, last I heard. Relief flooded me, immediately followed by confusion. You let him go? After he betrayed you? I'm not the monster the papers make me out to be, Eliza. He moved to the window, gazing out at the darkened grounds. Antonio was young, afraid. The FBI threatened his family. I understood his choice, even if I couldn't allow him to remain in my organization. I studied his profile, trying to reconcile this mercy with the ruthless reputation that preceded him. Why are you telling me this? He turned to face me. Because I want you to understand who I really am, not who others claim I am. Yes, I operate outside the law at times. Yes, I've done things I'm not proud of. But I have lines I don't cross, principles I don't compromise. Like not killing informants? I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Like not hurting those who act out of love for their family, he corrected. Antonio betrayed me to protect his parents. I respect family loyalty above all else. His eyes held mine. It's why I understood your choice to accept my offer, why I admire your dedication to your mother. The sincerity in his voice disarmed me. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider that perhaps the man standing before me was more complex, more human, than his reputation suggested. Why did you really hire me, Adriano? I asked quietly. The truth. He hesitated, seeming to wrestle with his answer. I told you before. I recognized something in you, a reflection. He moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, feel the warmth radiating from him. But there's more. From the moment I saw you on that balcony, trying to steal a moment's peace in a world determined to grind you down. I felt something I haven't felt in years. A connection. A possibility. My heart thundered in my chest. A possibility of what? Of not being alone, he said simply. Of being understood. Of finding someone who sees me. The real me. Not the myth or the monster. And doesn't turn away. His vulnerability, so unexpected from a man of his power, cracked something open inside me. All the emotions I'd been suppressing, the attraction, the growing affection, the dangerous pull toward him, flooded through the breach. "I see you," I whispered. "And I'm still here." Something shifted in his eyes, hope, wonder, desire. He reached out slowly, giving me time to retreat, and when I didn't, his hand cupped my cheek. "Eliza," he murmured, my name a question and a prayer on his lips. I answered by closing the distance between us, my mouth finding his in a kiss that felt inevitable, as if all paths had been leading to this moment. From the first time our eyes met, his arms encircled me, strong and sure, as he deepened the kiss with a hunger that matched my own. When we finally broke apart, breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. "You understand what this means?" he asked. "To be with me?" I did. It meant accepting all of him, the businessman, the criminal, the protector, the threat. It meant entering his world fully, with all its dangers and complications. It meant becoming a part of a family bound by loyalty and blood. "I understand," I said, knowing that in this moment, I was making a choice that would irrevocably alter my life. "I choose you, Adriano. All of you." He searched my eyes, looking for doubt or fear. Finding none, he smiled. A real smile that transformed his face, erasing years of hardness and caution. "Then I am yours," he said, "and you are mine. La mia regina, my queen. Protected, cherished, never again alone." In his arms, surrounded by his strength and his promise of protection, I felt the last of my reservations fall away. The path that had begun with spilled champagne and a desperate bargain had led me here, to a man both dangerous and tender, to a life both precarious and privileged. I had entered Adriano's world as a server, invisible to the powerful elite. I would remain in it as his chosen companion, his confidant, his equal in all the ways that mattered. Whatever came next, whatever challenges his world presented, we would face them together. For the first time since my mother's diagnosis had shattered my carefully planned life, I felt not just secure, but truly seen. In the most unexpected place, with the most dangerous man, I had found my home.